So something I want to revisit this week is the discussion of the new free or FDC Lord for the upcoming campaign pack. Now, we have gotten the FLC array updated for us from Creative Assembly, and it shows that after the Bone Giants, after the Skulls for Skull Throne content, we're hopefully going to be getting a, well, I guess it's kind of hard to say hopefully, but it looks like it's going to be a Dark Elf Legendary Lord. Now, what could this possibly mean? So, what we're taking a look at with this campaign pack is a brand new 4 Legendary Lords, all 4 legendary, starting locations for those Legendary Lords, and of course, the race attached to those Legendary Lords. So really what that begs the question is, why is this a Dark Elf? Why does it lend itself to whatever this content is? So, I'm going to say the big contenders for this campaign pack are Araby, Dogs of War in Tilia and Estalia, Vampire Coast, and Amazons. And I think Amazons are really more the fan favorite more than an actuality. There's nothing really cohesive for the Amazons, in my opinion, to really stick. So I really think we're really down to 3. Vampire Coast, Tilia and Estalia, and Araby. Those are the 3 I'm voting on. Albion is, a bonus faction that's in there. I think a lot of people kind of want that one, and they did have a pretty fleshed out list during Shadows over Albion, so that's a very huge choice. You could even introduce Be'lakor with that one, but there are a lot of things you could be doing here with this campaign pack. But let's take a look at who I think that next Legendary Lord is. And if we're looking at the Dark Elves, that doesn't leave a lot of Legendary Lords on the table. They've got Nagaroth, I almost called him Nagaroth. They've got Malekith, they've got the Cult of Pleasure in Marathi, and now they have Hargoneth itself. So they have Helebron. The only other real lord outside of course, Shadowblade, who is not a lord. He cannot be the army's lord in the tabletop. So this might be their chance to put in legendary heroes. But outside of Malice Darkblade, the only other one is Lokhir Fellheart, and I think Lokhir Fellheart has a really good place as a legendary lord. I think that to put Malice Darkblade into the game now is a little bit too hectic for the heart of Nagaroth. There's just going to be too many lords there between Marathi, Helebron, and Clan Rictus, and Nagarythe, and Malekith himself. There's just too much chaos going on in the heart of Nagaron if you were to put Malice Darkblade into the game. I think you'd have to be part of another DLC dual lord pack in a different portion of the world. Now, here's why I think Lokhir Fellheart is good. So, he is the Kraken Lord of Karen Carr. He's this Corsair Lord for the Dark Elf Army list. And what we're going to do here is we're going to read his little lore blurb, as we always do. We'll talk about his special abilities. What I want to talk about is the possibilities for his starting locations and what he might be like as a lord in the campaign map. I think he's going to be one that's going to be a little bit different from our other lords, and I hopefully this will lend itself to some of the stuff that's coming with this campaign pack. So let's talk about Lokhir Fellheart, Kraken Lord of Karen Carr. Some Dark Elves take to the seas in search of plunder or revenge, but many more do so to escape the dangers of Nagaroth. Not so for Lokhir Fellheart. He was born to ply the rolling seas, to bring fire and terror to the shores of other lands. It was his great-great-grandfather, Menrythe Fellheart, who first commanded the Black Ark Tower of Blessed Dread, and the doom-bringing flagship has answered to a Fellheart ever since. Lokhir is the latest of his line to rule over that great vessel of war, and, by all accounts, the most daring. Following his father's death at an assassin's hand, which unusually was not practical commission, the Fellhearts being one of the few Nagarothi families who hold blood to be thicker than water, Lokhir inherited command of both the Tower of Blessed Dread and its mighty fleet. He acted quickly to ensure both the loyalty of his crew and the favor of Mothlan by sacrificing the chief troublemakers to the sea god's glory. That very night, the decks of the Black Ark still slick with the first officer's blood, Lokhir led his new fleet out onto the open sea and a glorious future. Tales soon returned to Nagaroth of ports set ablaze, fleets scoured from seas, and whole cities put to the sword. The high elf port of Tor Canabray, whose dragon ships had long been the terror of Nagarothi corsairs, fell in a single night once Lokhir Fellheart set his attention to it. Such deeds and many more earned Fellheart not only more glory than that of his forebears combined, but also wealth beyond measure. Slaves and treasures flow into Karen Carr as never before, earning Fellheart the grudging respect, if not quite the loyalty, of the city's masters. The best plunder he keeps, but there is always plenty more for lavish rewards and bribes. Fellheart is much admired by his corsairs, not just for his generosity, but also because he fights at the forefront of every battle, a dangerous habit many Dark Elf admirals lose as soon as they can. The burdens of command have done little to blunt Fellheart's swordplay, and he fights as naturally as he reads the oceanic temper, feinting towards one foe before changing direction mid-thrust to cut down another. Ever aware that his crew's loyalty will last only as long as his reputation, Fellheart strives to slay enemy heroes and add their severed heads to the growing collection festooned about his command deck. He knows full well that every skull adds another tale to his legend, and, more importantly, gives mutineers a compelling reason not to cross swords with him. So, I mean, just listen to that lore. Listen to that the kind of flow of Kraken Lord of Karen Carr, Lokhir Fellheart here, right? He has to constantly ply his trade, which is essentially slave trading and piracy. So Lokhir Fellheart has to constantly be on the offensive, constantly doing all these things to keep loyalty up. And I think that would be a really awesome mechanic for Fellheart, is if, rather than having, the Blood Knight for Harganeth, or all the mechanics of Malekith and Marathi, Lokhir Fellheart has to constantly kind of maraud the seas, either attacking other players on the open ocean, or looting all the chests and goodies that we see throughout the sea for fear that loyalty drops. And let's say kind of like Marathi's Blood Knight, if loyalty drops, he starts to have public order issues, recruitment costs are increased, upkeep costs are increased, stuff like that. But if he keeps high, his legend is intact, loyalty increases across all of his characters, and maybe he also increases public order with that, and the recruitment cost of Corsairs and upkeep of Corsairs is significantly dropped, and maybe the growth of Black Arcs is increased. What I would really love to see if Lokhir Fellheart is very focused on the Black Arcs. I want him to have some sort of campaign mechanics that lend to that, because if we're looking at the Vampire Coast, if we're looking at Telia Estalia, we're looking at two factions predominantly that are going to have to be very heavy on the open ocean, right? Especially Telia and Estalia. If we're talking about how they're very much these dogs of war that are coming in and out of the new world, bringing treasures across to the old world, they're very much going to be involved in some sort of plunder mechanic that maybe has to do something with their faction. Or if we're talking about the Vampire Coast is zombie pirates. They have to be on the open ocean. It's kind of a big part of who they are, and how Luther Harkin's always summoning up ships and things from the briny depths. And that's what I'd love to see with Lokhir Fellheart, is playing off the mechanics that maybe these two factions derive in the game. Amazons maybe don't derive this as much. I think Amazons maybe as like the defenders of Lustria's like heartland, very kind of embedded deep within it, and not so much on the open ocean. But even Albion, you could argue that they would have maybe some sort of very big presence on the ocean as they push out of Albion and into Ulthuan, or out of Albion into the old world. Because whatever faction they add has to have a very big presence in the Vortex campaign, right? So that's why Araby is such a great choice, because they are known far and wide for their basically Crusade north. Araby with Sultan Jafar pushes into Telia and Estalia. So these factions are going to have to be something that is on the open ocean, because for fear of being landlocked. I mean, Vampire Coast is on the coast, so that's easy. Telia and Estalia is, again, on the coast, so it's easy. Araby, huge chunk of it on the coast, so again, it's easy. So it's easy for these factions to get out in the open ocean. So I think that Lokhir Fellheart's mechanics are going to have to derive off of that, and I think it would make a lot of sense, and it'd be really, really, really fucking cool. Let's talk about his special rules here real quick. He's got Daring Leap, which basically means that he can jump and intercept a duel going on in Total War, in the tabletop. So what I think that this would mean is that he might have some sort of mechanic where he can maybe jump around a little bit better, or escape in and out of combat, because it talks about how he is always has the ability to twist in and out of combat. So I'd love to have him have this ability to break away from combat, especially since he's got no mounts. He's an infantry lord, and what's the biggest problem with infantry lords is they're just so easy to inundate and lock in. If he had an ability that allowed him to pop in and out of combat, maybe a small 5-10 meter jump, something like that, almost something that I wish Skitter Leap was like. Then he also has Merciless Slaver, which basically means anything that's fleeing or going to take a panic attack test in tabletop does it at a -1. So here's how I want this mechanic to be. I want it to have a campaign mechanic where in Merciless Slaver gives bonuses to slaves, obviously. Slave economy has to be a big thing with Lokhir Fellheart, as well as like Corsair recruitment and upkeep bonuses, as well as, combat capabilities increasing. But I think Merciless Slaver would be a really cool thing is if, as a map-wide debuff or penalty, if your unit is fleeing, they suffer a further leadership penalty, so they're less likely to come back from fleeing. So I think that kind of plays into the hit-and-run tactics, kind of fear-inducing tactics of Lokhir Fellheart, especially Merciless Slaver, which does play off of that. Anyone who's taking a panic attest as a result of fear is less likely to succeed because of his reputation. And that's something I really, really like, is to play upon this Dread Pirate kind of... Dread Pirate Roberts, Dread Pirate Lokhir, as you wish. The kind of mechanic, though, that kind of persona that he's created, and not only his fame, but also what would be, a really cool campaign mechanic around him too, right? Is to have that constant thirst for continuing that fearful name. Now, the cool thing about Lokhir Fellheart is that he plays very heavily into a potential Total War Warhammer 3 Lord. He has a lot of doings in Ind and Cathay and all sorts of action. His red blades, his two swords, here's a little lore blurb on them. When Fellheart sacked the temple of Gilgadresh, he took great many treasures among them. Among them, a statue of Indin Bloodsteel. When melted down, it was forged into the deadliest pair of blades on the high seas. So obviously he has a lot of experience. I think it's like 440 or 400 years after he becomes Lokhir Fellheart, who he is now, the Kraken Lord. He forges these red blades and attacks Ind. So, attacks Ind, then forges the red blades. What it basically does is it allows him to re-roll any failed to wound roll in the tabletop. So again, obviously this is basically just like an AP bonus, boost to melee attack type of situation. Maybe even actually something that reduces melee defense around him, because that's the increased likelihood of him being able to hit. That'd make a lot of sense, I think. And his last magic item here is the Helm of the Kraken. This golden helmet makes the wearer as resilient and dread-inspiring as its namesake. So basically what this does is that it gives him a little bit better of an armor save, and it gives him regeneration and terror. That would be sick. Give this guy terror, give him regeneration, and right there, just giving him regeneration makes him a competitive lord. Majority of him being on foot, of course, kind of takes a huge amount of points away from that, but every time we see lords with regeneration, we see a very high propensity for being very competitive in the multiplayer scene. And hopefully with Total War's push, or what it seems like, heavier into the multiplayer scene, this would hopefully make him a little bit better and more of a choice for the Dark Elves, which typically kind of are a little one-sided in their choices when it comes to lords. In a competitive match, you almost always go with Malekith because he's got such a great kit, especially if you pop him on Seraphon. I mean, Morathi has really arisen lately as a terror in the night when it comes to anti-large, so it'd be great to see a lot more diversity here. Now, I am glossing over the obvious fact that this is a Dark Elf FDC when we should be seeing a different race FDC. I'm not going to touch on it because it's been beaten to a horse at this, beaten to a pulp. You never beat off a horse. Whatever the saying is, we've already talked about it plenty of times. I can't do it anymore. Let's just move on from there. This is a fact. We're getting these, and let's hope it's something cool. I mean, if it is Lokhir Fellheart, there's a lot of really cool options here. Now, if we're talking about the starting location, Karen Carr, I don't think can be a starting location. You'd be right next to Nagarath on the Vortex campaign. I think it just wouldn't make a lot of sense. If we were to add, say, Araby into the game, maybe they would start at the pirate coast of Araby. That would make a lot of sense. Or where the Shark Straits are, right off the Land of Assassins, right next to where the Tomb Kings start. That could make a lot of sense if it's Araby, to give them another option for attack, or another enemy to deal with, and maybe even a chance to ally with. So I think if it's Araby, it'd be one of the islands off the coast of the Southland. Now, if it's the Vampire Coast or the Amazons, I think we'd be looking at either the Dragon Isles or the Volcanic Islands on the Vortex map. This is going to be different for the Mortal Empires, obviously. But I think the Amazons would start around the Jungle of Green Mists and the Creeping Jungle. I think that's where they would probably start. And with the Dragon Isles being very close to some Dark Elves already, it would leave for a very, quick, easy alliance or confederation with the Dark Elves just to the south that are close to Teclis' starting position. Now, you could also have him start, him being Lokhir Fellheart, on the Bleak Coast, because I think the Bleak Coast was added as a way to give Tiranoc, or High Elves for that matter, a foothold into the Dark Elf lands. With Nagarath now starting on Karen Carr, I don't really see the point of the Bleak Coast being held by Tiranoc now. I think that you could even have the little island off the coast of Tiranoc be Lokhir Fellheart, but I think that we have enough Dark Elves starting next to High Elves, and I think that diversifying it a little bit would be a lot more fun. Even if you did with Tilia Nostalgia, and you had something like the Pirates of Sartosa. Well, I guess you really couldn't put anything right by them because it's just those islands all for Everus. But I just would like to see this faction, if it did start, somewhere a little bit more, or a little bit away from just the common dross of always being Dark Elf versus High Elf. Let's just put these guys together and they'll always have the same kind of first 20, 30 turns. I mean, even if they decided to make the Settlers Coast, if they decided to make that, like, this is where the Dogs of War start, here and maybe the island of Sartosa, maybe this is Tilia Nostalgia in the Vortex campaign, it'd still be cool to see Lokhir Fellheart starting somewhat close to them, or even as an option again for alliance with them. I'd really love to see that. Now, if we're talking about the Mortal Empires map, you already have the Volcanic Isles that they're pretty much already spoken for, right? That is pretty much Teclis' domain. So I would say they wouldn't start there, but they could start close to them, right across from those isles that oh gosh, what's his name? The Ark in the Black starts. That's a possibility. Also, you could have him start way to the north in actual Karen Carr, because on the Mortal Empires map, Nagarath starts not in the not in Nagaroth, but it actually starts further south by the Cult of Pleasure. And in Nagaroth actual, Nagaron actual, you've got Malekith and then Clan Rictus. So it would be really cool if Lokhir Fellheart was able to start in Karen Carr on the Mortal Empires map. And there's plenty of other island options up and down the coast that he could start in. And I think it makes for a really cool, kind of different scenario. You could even make him this Horde faction that doesn't actually have a starting location. It's just simply a buffed up Black Ark from the start. Like the Tower of the Blessed Dread is his start location, and it's just plopped somewhere in the ocean, and it already has X amount of growth, and it's already a beast of a monster. Those are really all really amazing options, I think, for Lokhir Fellheart. And I think he makes a lot of sense as the next FDC, FLC, whatever you want to call him, Lord for the Dark Elves. So guys, let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think it's going to be Malice Darkblade? Do you think it's going to be Lokhir Fellheart? Do you think I'm full of shit and it's not going to be either one of those, and it's going to be Khorne Darkhand or Delurus Dreadbringer? Those are the Blackguard and Blackguard of Nagaron and Executioners of Harganeth, respectively, special characters. Tell me what you guys think in the comment section. We have quite a bit of time, obviously, because we don't know when the hell the campaign pack's coming out. It's supposed to come out in 2018, so we'll see. But we don't know whether that's going to be, and we don't know what mechanics are coming, if any new ones are coming. Typically, when we got the campaign pack for Tomb Kings, we got a lot of new mechanics that influenced, the Dwarven Runic Forge. So hopefully we'll see some of those mechanics kind of trickle over into other races. And like I was saying, if they are pirate-based, or at least some sort of seafaring marauding base, it makes a lot of sense to kind of revisit Lokhir Fellheart and the abilities of the Black Arks. So as always, guys, thanks so much for watching here today. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Patreons, comment, like, all the things you have to do nowadays when you watch videos. Oh my god, so much, it's overbearing. But as always, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one and take care.